The grand ballroom of the Crestview Hotel was a sight to behold, adorned with sparkling chandeliers and elegantly draped fabrics that cascaded from the ceiling. Nathaniel Sinclair stood at the center of it all, a figure of polished sophistication in a tailored black suit, his sharp features framed by a well-groomed beard. As laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, he felt as if he were watching a play unfold from behind a glass wall, utterly detached from the performances of those around him. He had attended countless galas like this one, each more extravagant than the last, yet the excitement that once thrilled him had faded into a dull ache of monotony. The conversations swirling around him were as shallow as the champagne flutes they clutched. "Can you believe the stock market lately?" one man said, his voice a mix of bravado and boredom, while a woman nearby laughed at a joke that fell flat. Nathaniel forced a smile, nodding politely, but inside he felt a growing discontent. Another night, another crowd of pretense, he muttered to himself, taking a sip of his drink. The rich, bitter taste of whiskey did nothing to quell the emptiness gnawing at him. He had built a successful empire in the tech industry, commanding respect and envy from his peers. Yet he found himself questioning the worth of it all. What was the point of wealth if it could not buy genuine connection? Just as he turned to escape the suffocating atmosphere, he caught sight of a woman standing at the edge of the ballroom. She was not dressed in the typical gown that seemed to blend into the opulence surrounding her. Instead, she wore a simple yet elegant navy blue dress that accentuated her figure without overwhelming it. Her long dark hair flowed freely, and her eyes, striking and full of depth, seemed to be searching for something beyond the glimmering chandeliers. For a brief moment, Nathaniel felt a flicker of interest, something akin to curiosity. But before he could approach her, he noticed her frown deepen as a group of men approached her, their laughter harsh and their demeanor menacing. He watched as they cornered her, their bodies blocking her path, and a familiar surge of frustration welled up within him. "Hey, let's get out of here," one of them said, brushing his fingers against her arm in a way that made Nathaniel's stomach churn. The woman flinched, her expression shifting from surprise to apprehension. In that instant, something inside Nathaniel snapped. Without a second thought, he strode across the room, cutting through the crowd with purpose. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and authoritative, catching the attention of the men. They turned, surprise etched on their faces. Nathaniel towered over them, his presence commanding. "I think you should leave her alone." The men exchanged glances, weighing their options. The bravado that had fueled their harassment wavered in the face of Nathaniel's unwavering gaze. "Who the hell are you?" one of them sneered. But Nathaniel stood firm, his jaw clenched, radiating an intensity that made them hesitate. "Someone who doesn't take kindly to bullies," he replied, his tone sharp. As he took a step forward, the men shuffled back, the bravado dissolving into uncertainty. Nathaniel knew that behind his wealth lay an intimidating stature, one that had served him well in boardrooms and negotiations, and now it was being wielded to protect a stranger. The tension hung heavy in the air until the men finally broke eye contact and retreated, muttering insults as they disappeared into the crowd. Nathaniel turned to the woman, who stood there, a mix of gratitude and disbelief written across her features. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softening. Yes. "Thank you," she stammered, her voice a soothing melody amidst the chaos. "I didn't think anyone would come to help." "I couldn't just stand by," he replied, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "People shouldn't have to deal with that." She smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across her face that caught Nathaniel off guard. "I'm Emily," she said, extending her hand. "Nathaniel," he replied, taking her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, a strange electricity coursed between them, and he felt an unexpected connection, one that transcended the superficiality of the gala. "I owe you one, Nathaniel," Emily said, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "I was just trying to enjoy the evening and then, well, you saw how that went." "I'm glad I was here," he said, feeling a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. "These events can be overwhelming, can't they?" She nodded, her gaze drifting to the crowd, which now seemed even more insincere than before. It's like everyone is playing a role. I've always preferred authenticity over all this. She gestured around the room, her voice laced with a mixture of disappointment and longing. Nathaniel felt a pang of recognition in her words. It's easy to get lost in the noise, he admitted, his thoughts echoing her sentiment. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Before Emily could respond, an uncomfortable silence enveloped them, the cacophony of laughter and chatter fading into the background. Nathaniel felt a weight settle in his chest, a realization that their connection was fleeting. He wanted to know more about her, to peel back the layers of her story. But before he could form the words, she took a step back. I should go, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you again for your help. Wait, he said, instinctively reaching out as she turned to leave. Can we at least exchange numbers? I'd like to make sure you're safe. She glanced over her shoulder, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. I don't think that's necessary, she replied, her tone cautious but polite. Please, he pressed, the urgency in his voice surprising even himself. It would mean a lot to me. After a moment she relented, pulling out her phone and typing in her number. Just promise me you won't be a stranger, she said, a hint of a smile returning to her lips. Promise, he said, watching as she walked away, disappearing into the throng of guests. Nathaniel stood there for a moment longer, the weight of the evening pressing in around him. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the superficial conversations, they all seemed to fade away, replaced by the lingering warmth of Emily's smile. He had intervened in a moment of instinct, but the encounter had awakened something dormant within him, an inexplicable desire for connection, for something real. As he finally turned to rejoin the gala, Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling of longing that had settled in his chest. He had been surrounded by people all night, yet for the first time, he felt truly alone. The night was meant to celebrate success, but all he could think about was the woman he had just met, and how profoundly she had affected him in such a short time. The music played on, the crowd danced, and the night wore on. But Nathaniel's mind was elsewhere, lost in the memory of Emily, a stranger who had unwittingly opened a door to a world he had long since closed off. As Nathaniel stepped back into the gala, the vibrant music and laughter felt distant, as if he were an outsider looking in. The lights twinkled like stars, casting a golden glow on the opulent surroundings, yet all he could think about was Emily and the raw intensity of their brief encounter. The elegant clinking of champagne glasses and the chatter of high society conversations faded into a dull hum in his ears. He forced a smile as he passed a group of his business associates, but inside he was a storm of conflicting emotions. Hey Nathaniel, you disappeared on us, called out one of the guests, a slick-haired man named Jonathan who was known for his sharp wit and sharper suits. Did you find a hidden treasure in that alley? Nathaniel chuckled lightly, shaking his head. Just needed some air, he replied, his voice betraying none of the turmoil within. But instead of engaging further, he drifted away, seeking refuge in the expansive terrace overlooking the city skyline. He leaned against the railing, gazing out at the twinkling lights below, each one a reminder of the superficiality he had grown weary of. The night air was cool, but it did little to soothe the warmth that lingered in his chest from Emily's presence. Who was she? What life had led her to that alley? Nathaniel found himself questioning everything he had once deemed important. The luxury, the status. Had it all been worth it? Are you all right? A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Turning, he saw Lydia, a friend from the business world, approaching him. Her expression was one of concern, a stark contrast to the indifference he often encountered. Just deep in thought, he replied, trying to mask the turmoil with a casual tone. You know you can always talk to me, she offered gently, her brow furrowing. You don't have to carry everything alone. Nathaniel considered her words, but he felt a chasm between them that even the most earnest friendship couldn't bridge. I appreciate it, Lydia. Just thinking about the future, he said, opting for ambiguity. She nodded, though he could tell she sensed his evasion. Well, don't hesitate to reach out. We're all in this together, remember? With that, she walked away, leaving Nathaniel alone once more, still lost in his thoughts about Emily. Meanwhile, across the city, Emily sat in her small apartment, the remnants of the evening's trauma still clinging to her. The faint sounds of traffic outside were a dull backdrop to the whirlwind in her mind. She wrapped her arms around her knees, rocking slightly as memories of the alley flooded back. The fear, the anger, the feeling of being powerless. It was all too familiar. "What am I doing with my life?" she murmured to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do I keep ending up in these situations?" She thought of the broken relationships and the choices that had led her here, feeling trapped in a cycle that seemed impossible to break. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her reverie. It was a message from her friend Mia, checking in after hearing about the incident. Emily couldn't bring herself to respond immediately. Instead, she picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a name that brought with it a wave of guilt. Michael, her most recent boyfriend, who had always made her feel small and unworthy. "Maybe I should just cut ties with everyone," she muttered, her heart heavy. But deep down, she craved connection, even if it felt fraught with danger. As she sat in the dim light of her apartment, the weight of her loneliness bore down on her. "I deserve better than this," she said aloud, trying to convince herself. Yet the doubt lingered like a shadow, whispering tales of inadequacy. Across town, Nathaniel's thoughts were consumed by the same woman who haunted Emily's mind. He couldn't shake the image of her wide eyes reflecting both fear and gratitude, the way her hair danced in the wind as she hurried away. He felt an inexplicable pull towards her, a connection that transcended their brief encounter. The evening dragged on, with Nathaniel returning to the gala only to find himself surrounded by conversations that felt rehearsed and hollow. He excused himself to the bar, pouring another glass of whiskey, hoping to drown out the nagging thoughts. "Another rough night?" Jonathan's voice broke through the fog. "Just reflecting on life choices," Nathaniel replied, the honesty surprising even him. "Don't tell me you're going soft on us?" Jonathan laughed, slapping him on the back. "You're the king of this jungle. We have deals to seal and parties to win." "Maybe I'm tired of winning," Nathaniel countered, the words slipping out before he could stop himself. Jonathan raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "You? Tired of winning? What's gotten into you?" "Nothing, just a moment of clarity, I guess." "Clarity is overrated," Jonathan said with a dismissive wave. He turned back to his conversations, leaving Nathaniel alone once more. The gala continued in full swing, but Nathaniel felt detached, as if he were watching a play unfold without any interest in the outcome. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to life than the endless pursuit of wealth and status. His thoughts turned back to Emily. What was she doing now? He envisioned her in her cafe, serving coffee with a smile that masked her own troubles. He imagined her laughter, the way it might light up a room, and for the first time in years, he felt a longing that transcended mere attraction. As the gala began to wind down, Nathaniel made a decision. He couldn't let this feeling slip away like so many others. He needed to find Emily, to understand her, to see if the connection they shared was as profound as it felt. The next morning, fueled by determination, Nathaniel found himself outside the cafe where Emily worked. The cozy little establishment was nestled between two larger buildings, its windows adorned with colorful flowers. He hesitated for a moment, his heart racing at the thought of what he might say. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee wrapping around him like a warm embrace. The cafe was bustling with the morning crowd, but his eyes immediately sought out Emily behind the counter. She was pouring coffee, her hair pulled back, a look of concentration on her face. "Here goes nothing," he murmured to himself, steeling his nerves as he approached the counter. "Good morning. What can I get for you today?" Emily asked, her voice cheerful but distant, her eyes not yet meeting his. "Actually, I was hoping to see you," Nathaniel replied, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. Emily looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to cautious curiosity. "You came here for me?" "I did. He paused, searching for the right words. "I can't stop thinking about our encounter the other night. I wanted to make sure you were okay." Her brow furrowed slightly, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her cool demeanor. "I'm fine, thank you. Just another day." Nathaniel took a step closer, lowering his voice slightly as he leaned on the counter. I don't believe that. That night was intense. I just wanted to see if you wanted to talk about it, or anything really. Emily hesitated, her eyes searching his for sincerity. I don't know if I'm ready for that, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I understand, Nathaniel replied, a pang of disappointment washing over him. But I'd like the chance to get to know you better if you're willing. She regarded him thoughtfully, her defenses slowly lowering. Okay, she finally said, her resolve softening. Maybe we can talk over coffee sometime, just no expectations. Deal? Nathaniel smiled, the weight of uncertainty lifting just a little. As he left the cafe, he felt a spark of hope igniting inside him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Emily was more than just a fleeting moment. She represented a chance at something real, something deeper than the surface of his affluent world. Back in her cafe, Emily watched him walk away, her heart racing with the unfamiliar thrill of possibility. Perhaps this was the turning point she had been waiting for, a chance to rewrite her story. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could find her way out of the darkness. Nathaniel stepped into the cozy cafe, the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods enveloping him like a comforting blanket. The place bustled with life, the clatter of cups and the murmur of conversations creating a vibrant backdrop. He scanned the room, his heart racing as he searched for the familiar figure who had captivated him so profoundly just days before. When he finally spotted Emily, her back turned to him as she expertly maneuvered behind the counter, a rush of anticipation surged through him. Taking a deep breath, he approached the counter, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor. Emily turned to face him, her expression shifting from surprise to a warm smile. It was as if the world outside faded away, leaving just the two of them in that moment. Hey there, stranger, she greeted, a hint of playful sarcasm in her voice. Back for more coffee, or did you just miss my dazzling personality? Nathaniel chuckled, his heart swelling at her lightheartedness. A little of both, I suppose, but honestly, I was more hoping to see you. Her smile faltered slightly, and he noticed a flicker of vulnerability behind her bright eyes. I'm glad you did. How have you been? Better now, he replied, leaning against the counter. I've been thinking about what happened the other night. About you. Emily hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron as if to prepare herself for a deeper conversation. It was a rough night, but you were incredible. I still can't believe you intervened like that. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing, he said, his voice sincere. It's not in my nature, but it did make me realize how detached I've been from everything, from people. You made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. She looked down, her fingers playing with the edge of her apron. I know what you mean. Sometimes it feels like we're just going through the motions, doesn't it? Nathaniel nodded, encouraged by her openness. Exactly. I've spent so much time chasing success, and for what? It's all so empty sometimes. I thought I had everything figured out, but then you came along and made me question everything. Emily met his gaze, her expression thoughtful. It's funny how a single moment can shift your entire perspective. I've been stuck in this rut too, trying to find a way out. It feels like I'm constantly fighting against my own life choices. What do you mean? Nathaniel asked, genuinely curious. What's been holding you back? She sighed, a weight seeming to settle on her shoulders. I've had my fair share of bad relationships, you know. I keep falling for the wrong people and it's exhausting. I want more for myself, but it's like I'm trapped in this cycle. Sometimes I just don't know how to break free. I can relate more than you might think, Nathaniel said, his voice low. I've made so many mistakes in my life too. I've hurt people, and I've let my ambition cloud my judgment. It's as if I built this wall around myself to protect me from getting hurt, but in the process I've pushed everyone away. Emily's eyes softened, and for a brief moment he saw understanding reflected in them. Maybe we both need to take a leap of faith, open ourselves up to the possibilities even if it's scary. He took a step closer, the distance between them shrinking. What if we took that leap together? I mean, I've been thinking about seeing where this connection leads, but I also don't want to rush you into anything." A delicate silence stretched between them, both aware of the unspoken tension lingering in the air. Emily bit her lip, her brow furrowing as she weighed her options. It's complicated. I'm not sure I'm ready for something new, especially after everything I've been through." "I get that. I really do," Nathaniel reassured her. "But maybe we could start slow, just talking, getting to know each other better." "I'd like that," she said softly, a smile creeping back onto her face. "Talking sounds nice." As they settled into a corner table, the cafe's ambiance faded into the background, creating a little world of their own. Nathaniel found himself captivated by Emily's stories, her laughter echoing through the room like music. They talked about their families, their dreams, and the things that made them feel alive. Nathaniel shared his love for sailing, how the vastness of the ocean made him feel free, while Emily spoke of her passion for painting, how colors and strokes allowed her to express emotions she often kept bottled up. "Art is like therapy for me," she said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I can pour everything I feel onto the canvas. It's such an incredible release." "I'd love to see your work sometime," Nathaniel replied, genuinely interested. "Maybe you could show me a piece." Emily's cheeks flushed slightly. "I'd be embarrassed, but okay, I can do that." As the conversation flowed effortlessly, Nathaniel felt a warmth blossoming in his chest, a sense of connection that he had longed for but never truly experienced. He could see Emily's walls crumbling piece by piece, and it filled him with hope. But beneath that hope lingered a fear of what lay ahead, of taking risks that could lead to heartbreak. "Can I ask you something?" he ventured, his tone turning more serious. "Sure," she replied, her curiosity piqued. "What do you see for yourself in the future? What do you want?" Emily hesitated, her brow furrowing as she contemplated her answer. "I want to feel fulfilled, to create a life that makes me happy. I want to travel, to explore new places, and to find someone who truly understands me, someone who sees beyond the surface. Someone like me," Nathaniel teased lightly, but his heart raced at the thought. "Someone like you, maybe," she admitted, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath hitch. Just then, the bell above the cafe door chimed, and a group of customers entered, breaking the momentary spell between them. Nathaniel watched as Emily's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. He didn't want to push her, but he also didn't want to lose this connection they had begun to forge. "Let's take our time," he said gently, sensing her hesitation. "No pressure, just us, figuring it out as we go." "Yeah, I'd like that," Emily replied, relief apparent in her voice. "It's nice to know we can just be ourselves." As the day turned into evening, they continued to talk, but an undercurrent of tension persisted. Both were aware of their budding feelings, yet something held them back, an unspoken fear of vulnerability and rejection. Nathaniel found himself wanting to reach out, to bridge the gap that lingered between them, but he refrained, understanding the delicate nature of their situation. "Maybe we should do this again sometime," he suggested, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the cafe. "I'd love to learn more about you, and maybe share more about myself too." "I'd like that," Emily agreed, her voice soft but firm. "Let's keep talking, see where it goes, but we should take it slow, okay?" "Slow it is," Nathaniel nodded, a mixture of excitement and nervousness coursing through him. He couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary, yet the shadows of their pasts loomed over them, warning of potential heartache. As they stood to leave, Nathaniel took a moment to memorize her features, the way her hair caught the light, the warmth in her smile. He knew that whatever lay ahead would require courage, but he felt ready to face it, especially if it meant discovering more about Emily and perhaps about himself. "See you soon," he said, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "See you soon," she echoed, her heart suddenly racing. They exchanged a lingering glance before parting ways, each step filled with a mix of hope and trepidation, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them like a promise yet to be fulfilled. Nathaniel stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with a meticulous touch. The lavish charity event he was hosting loomed ahead, filled with the glitterati of the city, business moguls, socialites, and influencers. Yet, despite the opulence surrounding him, his mind was far from the grandeur of the evening. It was occupied by thoughts of Emily, the striking woman whose brief presence had ignited something within him that he hadn't felt in years. He sighed, feeling the weight of expectation press down on his shoulders. "This is just a facade," he muttered to himself, recalling their last encounter at the cafe. The way she had smiled, the softness in her eyes when they shared their vulnerabilities, was a stark contrast to the cold world he often navigated. As he stepped into the ballroom, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses enveloped him. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like stars, casting a warm glow over the crowd. But Nathaniel felt detached, as if he were an observer, not a participant. He scanned the room, searching for Emily, hoping to share the evening with her. When he finally spotted her, a rush of excitement coursed through him. She stood slightly apart from the crowd, her simple yet elegant dress highlighting her natural beauty. However, the way she fidgeted with her hair and shifted her weight indicated her discomfort in this opulent environment. Nathaniel made his way toward her, weaving through the throng of people, determined to make her feel welcome. "Emily!" he called out, his voice cutting through the din. She turned, her expression shifting from apprehension to a warm smile that lit up her face. "Nathaniel," she greeted, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for inviting me. This place, it's incredible." "It is, isn't it?" he replied, offering her his arm. "But it's nothing compared to you." Her cheeks flushed slightly as she took his arm, and together they moved into the sea of well-dressed guests. As they mingled, Nathaniel introduced her to various acquaintances, but he noticed how she seemed to shrink under the weight of their superficial banter. The spark in her eyes dimmed when she was met with polite smiles that lacked genuine interest. "Why did you decide to come?" she asked, leaning in slightly to speak over the music. "I wanted to show you a different side of my life," he admitted, glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "I know this world can be overwhelming, especially for someone who values authenticity." Emily bit her lip, her gaze drifting to the floor. "I appreciate that, but I feel out of place here. Everyone seems so perfect." Nathaniel smiled softly, understanding her discomfort. "Trust me, it's all a facade. Most of these people don't know what it means to be real. They hide behind their wealth and status. But you, Emily, you're refreshing." She met his gaze, and for a moment, the noise of the party faded away. "Thank you, Nathaniel. That means a lot." They found a quieter corner of the ballroom, tucked away from the prying eyes of the elite. The chatter faded into a low hum, allowing them a moment of peace. Nathaniel leaned against the wall, his heart racing as he caught her gaze. "I wanted to share this night with someone genuine, someone like you." Emily's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What do you mean by someone like me?" "Someone who isn't afraid to be vulnerable, who understands that there's more to life than just status and wealth," he confessed, the words flowing before he could filter them. "I don't have much wealth," she replied, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I work at a cafe and struggle to make ends meet." "But you have something far more valuable," Nathaniel countered, leaning closer. "You have a spirit that shines brightly, and that's worth more than any dollar sign." Their laughter mingled, creating an intimate bubble amidst the chaos of the event. But just as Nathaniel felt the walls of his carefully constructed life begin to crumble, a voice broke through the moment. "Ah, Nathaniel, there you are." A tall man with slicked back hair and a tailored suit approached, a smirk plastered on his face. "Who's this? Your latest charity case?" The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud, and Nathaniel felt a cold rush of anger flood through him. "This is Emily," he said, his voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "She's a friend." "A friend?" The man laughed, his tone dripping with condescension. "You really are losing your touch, aren't you? I thought you had better taste than this." Emily's expression turned from surprise to hurt as she glanced at Nathaniel, her earlier confidence deflating like a balloon. "Don't mind him," Nathaniel said quickly, his protective instincts kicking in. "He doesn't know what he's talking about." The man waved a dismissive hand. "Whatever you say, Nathaniel, just remember, you're a businessman, not some charity worker. Keep that in mind before you get too involved with the help." With that, he sauntered off, leaving a lingering tension in the air. Nathaniel turned to Emily, who looked both shocked and pained. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice low. "He's a jerk. You deserve better than that." Emily took a deep breath, trying to mask her disappointment. "It's fine. I just didn't expect— I mean, I know I don't belong here. Maybe I should have listened to that voice in my head telling me to stay away." "No," Nathaniel replied firmly, his eyes locking onto hers. "You belong here as much as anyone else. You're not just the help. You're a remarkable person, and I want you to be here with me." She looked away, the hurt still evident in her features. "But this world, it's not my world. I don't fit in. I don't know how to navigate it." "Neither do I," he admitted, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his tone. "I feel just as lost sometimes, but with you, I feel like I can be myself." For a moment, Emily's expression softened and he could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. "You really mean that?" "Absolutely," Nathaniel said, his voice steady as he reached for her hand. "Let's forget about the crowd and just be us." But before they could lean into the connection they had forged, the weight of the room pressed back in. The music swelled and couples began to dance, the air thick with tension and expectation. Nathaniel felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him as he sensed Emily's discomfort rising again. "Let's step outside for a moment," he suggested, leading her through the crowd toward the balcony. The night air was cool against their skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of the ballroom. As they stepped outside, the cacophony of the party faded into a gentle murmur, allowing them a moment of clarity. The stars twinkled above, a reminder of the vastness of the world beyond their immediate struggles. Nathaniel turned to Emily, his heart racing with unspoken words, but the moment was interrupted by the sound of heels clicking against the marble floor behind them. "Hey, Nathaniel, there you are," another voice called out, shattering the intimacy he had hoped to reclaim with Emily. As they turned, Nathaniel felt the tension building again. Emily's expression shifted to one of disappointment, and he could sense her withdrawing. "Looks like the party isn't over yet," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "No. Wait," he began, but she was already stepping back, the warmth of their moment slipping away. Before he could reach out to her, she turned and walked toward the entrance, the distance between them widening with every step. Nathaniel's heart sank as he realized that their moment of connection had been lost, and he was left standing alone on the balcony, the weight of his world pressing down on him once more. The gala had ended, but the air still buzzed with the remnants of laughter and clinking glasses as Nathaniel stepped outside into the cool night. The weight of the evening's events pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had encountered Emily, a woman who had unwittingly shattered the glass facade of his meticulously crafted world. Now, as he stood under the star-speckled sky, he felt a mix of frustration and longing. "Damn it," he muttered to himself, recalling the moment his associate had belittled Emily. He had felt a surge of anger, an unfamiliar sensation that had compelled him to defend her. "What has happened to me?" he wondered. He had always prioritized business over empathy, profit over people. Yet now he found himself grappling with the need to confront the very person who represented the part of him he had long neglected. With determination burning in his chest, Nathaniel strode towards the parking lot, his mind racing. He spotted his associate, Greg, leaning against a sleek black car, a smug grin plastered across his face. Nathaniel felt a surge of impatience. He had to set things right. "Greg!" he called out, his voice steely. The man turned, his expression shifting from casual amusement to wary curiosity. "Nate, what's up?" "You look like you just saw a ghost," Greg replied, folding his arms across his chest. "Cut the crap. I want to talk about what you said about Emily at the event," Nathaniel said, stepping closer, his tone firm. He was done with the superficiality that defined his world, and Greg's behavior had crossed a line. "Oh, come on. She's just a waitress. What's the big deal?" Greg shrugged, dismissing Nathaniel's concerns as if they were nothing more than a fly buzzing around his ear. Nathaniel clenched his fists, a wave of anger surging through him. She's more than that. You don't know anything about her. You don't know what she's been through or what she's capable of, he asserted, his voice rising slightly. You think your money and status make you superior, but you're just as shallow as the people you look down on. Greg raised an eyebrow, the smile fading from his face. Whoa, Nate, chill. I was just joking around. No need to get all worked up over it. Joking? You think belittling someone is funny? You treat people like they're expendable, and that's not the kind of person I want to be associated with anymore. Nathaniel snapped, his frustration boiling over. He felt the weight of his own past actions pressing down on him. You've got this twisted idea of what it means to be successful, and I'm done playing that game. Greg's expression shifted to one of annoyance. You're being dramatic. This isn't like you. You've always been about the bottom line. What's gotten into you? Nathaniel took a deep breath, the tension in his body slowly easing. Maybe I've finally realized that life isn't just about profits and prestige. Maybe I want to be someone who stands up for others instead of hiding behind wealth and power, he said, his voice steady as he met Greg's gaze. After a moment of silence, Greg scoffed. Good luck with that. You'll be back to your old self in no time. Nathaniel shook his head, turning away from Greg's dismissive attitude. It was time to focus on what truly mattered. Emily. He needed to find her, to apologize for the way things had gone at the gala, and to show her that he was willing to change. Meanwhile, across town, Emily sat on her small bed, the shadows of her past looming over her. The evening had shaken her to her core. She had felt so out of place at the gala, an unwelcome intruder in a world she had never belonged to. Nathaniel's kindness had been a bright spot, but the sting of Greg's words still echoed in her mind. What was I thinking? She whispered to herself, running a hand through her hair. He's a businessman and I'm just a waitress. I should have known better than to get involved with someone like him. She pulled her knees to her chest, feeling the weight of insecurity settle in her stomach. It's safer this way. Protect your heart, Emily, she reminded herself. But deep down, she felt the flicker of something more, something that terrified her. Just then, her phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking her reverie. She grabbed it, her heart racing as she saw Nathaniel's name on the screen. Taking a deep breath, she answered, her voice cautious. Hello? Emily, it's Nathaniel, he said, his voice warm yet laced with urgency. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Her heart skipped a beat, excitement and fear clashing within her. I don't know, Nathaniel. I'm not sure it's a good idea. Please, he interjected, his tone earnest. I just want to explain myself. I've been thinking a lot about what happened at the gala, and I need to make things right. Emily hesitated, torn between her desire to see him and the need to protect her fragile heart. I don't want to be a burden. You have your life and I have mine. Maybe it's best if we just move on. No, it's not like that, Nathaniel pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. You're not a burden. You mean something to me, and I want to show you that. Silence lingered between them, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Emily bit her lip, trying to gather her thoughts. Where do you want to meet? She finally asked, her heart pounding. How about the park? Tomorrow, around noon, Nathaniel suggested, hope threading through his voice. Okay, I'll be there, she replied, her resolve wavering. As she hung up, a mix of anticipation and dread coursed through her veins. Nathaniel spent the night pacing in his apartment, restless with thoughts of Emily. He realized that in the labyrinth of his own life, she was the light he had been searching for. The urgency to prove himself to her grew stronger. He needed to be vulnerable, to share the parts of himself he had hidden away for so long. The next day, Nathaniel woke up with a sense of purpose. He carefully selected a simple yet heartfelt gift, a small notebook. Inside, he wrote down his thoughts, his fears, and his dreams. It was a piece of himself he wanted to share with Emily, an invitation for her to see the man behind the suit. At noon, he arrived at the park, the sun shining brightly overhead. The vibrant colors of the flowers and the laughter of children playing filled the air, but his heart felt heavy with anticipation. He spotted Emily sitting on a bench, her posture tense and guarded. As he approached, he noticed the way her eyes sparkled with uncertainty, yet held a glimmer of hope. Hey, he greeted softly, taking a seat beside her. Hi, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad you came," he said, his gaze steady on her. "I wanted to apologize for how my associate treated you. It was unacceptable." Emily nodded, her expression still cautious. "It's okay. I'm used to it, I guess. People like him, they don't really see me." "That's why I'm here," Nathaniel said, his voice earnest. "I want to see you. I want to know who you are beyond the surface." He reached into his bag and pulled out the notebook, offering it to her. "This is me. My thoughts, my struggles, my dreams. I want you to understand that I'm not just a businessman. I'm trying to find my own way, just like you." Emily took the notebook, her fingers brushing against his. The gesture felt intimate, and she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "You're not just a businessman," she murmured, flipping through the pages filled with his handwriting. "You're human." "Yes," he replied, a smile breaking through his anxious demeanor. "And I want to learn about you too. I want to know your dreams, your fears, everything." For the first time that day, Emily felt a warmth blossoming in her chest. "I've always felt like I had to protect myself. I've made so many mistakes," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Nathaniel leaned closer, sincerity etched on his face. "We all have. But it's how we learn and grow that matters." As they sat in the park, surrounded by the beauty of blooming flowers and laughter, both Nathaniel and Emily realized that this moment was only the beginning of a journey that would forever change them. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the park as Nathaniel spread the checkered blanket across the grass. The air was alive with the scents of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass, a stark contrast to the sterile ambience of the gala he had previously attended. This picnic was more than just a casual outing. It was his attempt to bridge the chasm that had grown between him and Emily. He had spent the last few days reflecting on his feelings and the ways he had failed to honor their connection. The thought of losing her felt unbearable. As he arranged a basket filled with gourmet sandwiches, fresh fruit, and a bottle of sparkling water, he felt a flutter of nervous excitement. He had invited Emily here to share not only a meal, but the deeper parts of himself that he had kept locked away for so long. He hoped that this gesture would show her how much she meant to him. When Emily arrived, her face lit up with surprise. "Nathaniel, this is beautiful," she said, her eyes scanning the vibrant scene he had created. The sunlight danced in her hair, making her look ethereal. She felt a warmth in her chest, a gentle reminder of the connection they had begun to build. "I wanted to do something special," he replied, offering her a seat on the blanket. "I figured we could escape from everything for a bit and just enjoy each other's company." Emily sat down, her heart fluttering as she took in the picnic spread. "You really didn't have to go through all this trouble," she said, but her smile betrayed her delight. "It's perfect." As they dug into the food, the conversation flowed more easily than it had before. Nathaniel found himself sharing anecdotes from his childhood, stories that revealed a more vulnerable side of him. "I was a bit of a nerdy kid," he chuckled, recalling a time he had built a makeshift fort in his living room. "My friends and I used to pretend we were explorers on a grand adventure." Emily laughed, her eyes sparkling. "I can totally picture that. You, the little adventurer, saving the world one living room at a time." "I was pretty serious about it," Nathaniel replied, grinning. "I had a whole map and everything. My mum thought it was cute, but my dad—" His voice trailed off, and he looked down at his hands, suddenly feeling the weight of his father's disapproval. "What about your dad?" Emily asked gently, sensing the shift in his mood. "He didn't really get it," Nathaniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "He wanted me to be successful, to follow in his footsteps. I guess I spent most of my childhood trying to prove myself to him, and I lost a part of who I was in the process." "Did you ever get the chance to show him who you really were?" Emily asked, her heart aching for him. She could feel the walls he had built around himself starting to crumble. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "He passed away before I could find a way to let him see me. It's been hard, carrying that around." Emily reached out, placing her hand over his. "You're more than what others expect of you, Nathaniel. You have every right to be who you are. You're not just a businessman, you're a person with dreams and fears." Nathaniel looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for saying that. You make it easier to be honest and to face my past. I want to be that person again, the one who dreamed big." They continued to share their dreams and fears, laughter mingling with moments of silence as they both reflected on their lives. The atmosphere was light, yet there was an undercurrent of something deeper, a connection that felt almost electric. Just as they leaned in closer, the world around them faded into the background, Emily feeling a warmth spread through her as she caught Nathaniel's gaze. But then, as if the universe had other plans, a stranger approached them, a look of urgency on his face. "Excuse me," he said, breaking their intimate moment. "Are you Nathaniel Hart?" Nathaniel straightened, confused. "Yes, that's me." "What's going on?" The stranger hesitated, then continued, "I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Emily." Emily's heart raced and she quickly looked between the two men. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The stranger took a deep breath, his expression serious. "I know this is unexpected, but Emily is the sister of Jake Thompson." The name hit Nathaniel like a punch to the gut. Jake had been his best friend in childhood, the one person who understood him amidst the pressures of family expectations. They had shared countless adventures, dreams, and secrets until fate had cruelly taken him away in a tragic accident years ago. "What?" Nathaniel's voice was barely a whisper. He turned to Emily, trying to process the revelation. "Is this true?" Emily's eyes widened, confusion and disbelief washing over her. I didn't know. I mean, I've heard the name before, but it was just a fleeting memory. I didn't realize." Nathaniel's mind raced, memories flooding back. "I lost Jake when I was 18. It was devastating. I've tried to forget, to move on, but the pain..." His voice cracked and he looked away, grappling with the resurfacing grief. "I'm so sorry, Nathaniel," Emily said softly, her heart aching for him. "I never meant for this to come out like this." "It's not your fault," Nathaniel replied, shaking his head. I didn't expect to hear his name today, especially not in connection with you." The stranger, sensing the emotional turmoil, stepped back, giving them space. "I'll leave you two to talk. I just thought you should know." As he walked away, the weight of the revelation settled heavily between Nathaniel and Emily. The air felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. "I don't understand," Emily said, her voice shaking. "How could we have this connection and not know? I've spent so long trying to figure out who I am, and now this..." "Emily," Nathaniel interrupted gently, "this doesn't change how I feel about you. It's just a lot to process. I've been running from my grief for so long, and now it's standing right in front of me, wrapped in a connection I never anticipated." "I feel lost," she confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "I always felt like something was missing in my life, and now I find out that you and Jake were so close. I never knew my brother well, but I always wanted that connection. And now..." Nathaniel reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Maybe this is a way for us to both heal. We can honor Jake's memory together. We can share our stories, our losses. I don't want to lose you, Emily. You mean too much to me." She searched his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the same warmth that had drawn her to him in the first place. "I don't want to lose you either. I've felt so alone for so long, and now, maybe we can help each other find our way." In that moment, they both understood that their paths had been intertwined for reasons beyond their comprehension. They were two souls seeking solace in a world that had often felt isolating. The revelation brought pain, but also the promise of healing, a chance to confront their past together and move forward into a future marked by understanding and connection. They might have started as strangers, but now they were bound by a shared history that would guide them into an unknown yet hopeful tomorrow.